British Prime Minister Boris Johnson wants to give the British economy an ecological orientation. He promises 440,000 jobs and billions in investments. Before the climate summit, however, unexpected hurdles arise because the firmly planned nuclear power causes problems. Around £620 million, that's around 734 million euros, for charging stations and financial subsidies for electric vehicles, support for households who replace their gas boiler with a heat pump, £625 million for tree planting and the regeneration of peatlands. 12 days before the start of the climate summit COP26 in Glasgow in Scotland, the British government presented a strategy for how it intends to achieve the statutory target of reducing net emissions to zero by 2050. Add to this £120 million for the development of modular small nuclear reactors. £140 million are reserved for the development of two regions in the north of England, in which the long-term storage of carbon dioxide is to be tested, so-called carbon capture storage. All of this is part of the so-called net zero strategy. This is not only an ecological turnaround, it also means an important economic change, said Energy Secretary Greg Hans in Parliament on Tuesday. He envisaged 440,000 jobs in green sectors across the country by 2030, as well as £90 billion in private investment to help even out regional disparities in the UK. The major green transformation of the economy is one of Prime Minister Boris Johnson's primary goals or promises. Great Britain is to become a pioneer in ecological industries, renew its own economy in a sustainable manner, and thus give itself a new, successful international image after Brexit. COP26, the summit aimed at keeping climate change and global warming in check, should provide the stage for this. But now, the Prime Minister is lowering expectations. It was always clear that COP was going to be extremely difficult, Johnson told Bloomberg News Agency. He appealed to the participants to keep alive the prospect of limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees compared to the pre-industrial era. For that one, would have to agree on some clear goals. The ongoing pandemic, but also the rapid rise in energy prices, make the success of the negotiations from October 31st ever more uncertain. Last but not least, a number of key political actors do not even come. With the Chinese President Xi Jinping and Jair Bolsonaro from Brazil, two representatives of major greenhouse emitters are missing. An approval from Narendra Modi from India is also still pending. In their own country too, the ecological turnaround is proving to be more complex than the Prime Minister outlined a year ago when he presented his 10-point plan for a green industrial revolution, as he called it. For example, the financial support for heat pumps with £5,000. The great importance of gas heating in the country means that gas boilers account for almost a fifth of all carbon dioxide emissions. They are to be replaced by heat pumps. However, the expected ban on installing gas boilers in new buildings did not materialize. It only resulted in a corresponding recommendation for the period from 2035 onwards. We are preparing some pretty big changes in the way we heat, but the green shirts of the boiler police will not pound their front doors with their Jesus slippers and pick up their trusty boilers with carrots in front of them. Johnson tried to take away the concern that households would have to face considerable conversion costs in the coming years. And he's making fun of it. That's his usual style. If anything goes wrong, make fun of it. The significantly higher gas prices and the associated higher energy costs for the winter give a foretaste of the costs resulting from the conversion of the energy system. The paper does not set any goals for aviation or meat consumption. The strategy also leaves a gap in both nuclear power. For weeks, the British media have been reporting on the central role that nuclear power plants are intended to play as a buffer in a system that primarily relies on wind energy. The existing reactors will go offline in the next decade, so far only one new nuclear power plant is under construction in Somerset. But The approval for 1 or 2 more reactors should hook on the financial model. The criticism of the central climate strategy is correspondingly harsh. This document is more of a cherry picking than the complete meal that we need for the net zero, said Rebecca Newsom of Greenpeace Great Britain to the British newspaper Guardian. Additional money for tree planting and advances in electric vehicles do not make up for the lack of concrete targets for large-scale renewable energy, investment in public transport, or a concrete commitment to the end of oil and gas licenses, she said. Half-hearted targets that are drafty, they say. The only move is to make houses in the country less dependent on CO2 emissions. Entire branches of industry are not taken into account at all, lamented Ed Miliband, who is responsible for economic issues in the shadow cabinet of the opposition Labour Party. He pointed to the steel industry, which decarbonisation is likely to cost £6 billion over the next 15 years, but which is not even mentioned in the paper. The cost of the ecological transition for households cannot yet be assessed, according to a paper published at the same time by the Ministry of Finance. As with all economic changes, however, the costs and benefits of change will reach households through the labour market, commodity prices and valuations, it was said. One of the clearest effects for the public sector is likely to be an erosion of tax revenues from sectors that produce fossil fuels. Prime Minister Johnson, on the other hand, is, as always, confident that too much has to change, at least for consumers. This strategy shows that we can build a greener future without looking at a penitent shirt, he wrote in the introduction to the new strategy. We would drive, fly and heat cars in 2050 as well. But our cars will glide through the cities electrically and noiselessly. Emission-free planes make flights possible without feeling guilty, and we heat our houses with cheap, reliable energy that we get from the wind in the North Sea. Yeah, I'm looking forward to see that. And I'll see you in my next video. Bis gleich.